Hello, in this video we're going to give an introduction to type in Python and specifically talk about the 4 types that we're going to be using. That is strings, integers, floats, and booleans. And what the big thing we want to walk away from this video with is an understanding that type matters in terms of how a program stores and uses variables. And I have to start with this example. I'll tell students that my area code is 416, and then I'll continue to teach for a while, and then I'll turn to someone and say, what's my area code plus 1? And very quickly a student will say, well, that's 417. And then I'll turn to someone else and say, can you use my area code in a sentence? And they'll say, your area code is 416. And what this shows is that when I told the class my area code, I didn't say to them, my area code is an integer 416. I didn't say to them, my area code is a string 416. I just told them it was 416, and then you have the ability to use that in a number of different ways. In this case, you added 1 to it, so treated it like a number. And in this case, you used it in a sentence, so we treated it as a string. And that's fine for us, but programming languages will store variables differently depending on their type. And as a result, that impacts how they can be used. So strings are collections of characters. So I could say something like name, and we could put Bob Holt. Right? And so there's a string. I know it's a string because it's contained within quotes. I can also say food equals pizza. And Python supports both single and double quotes. The key thing with strings we want to understand is we want to understand this idea with strings that they have both length and index values. So if we look at the first one, name, we can pull out the length really quickly from this simply by counting the characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this has a length of 8. And the index values are 0 to 7. And so the length is always the number of characters, and that includes the spaces. And then the indexes are always from 0 to the length minus 1. So in this second case, pizza has a length of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it has index values of 0 to 4. And this is a really important idea to understand early. And we can take strings and put them together. So I can say a sentence, and I can say equals So what have I done now? I like to put spaces in here even though they're not needed. I've taken the name, which is a string, and I've added it to the word loves, and I've taken the food, which is a string. And this is the process of concatenation, that is putting strings together. So the next type we want to familiarize ourselves with are what are called numeric types. And we have 2 types. We have integers and floats. So integers store integer values. So I might do something like area code int equals 416. And so now what I have is I have an area code stored as an integer 416. Likewise, I could up here, I could say area code string equals 416. So what's important to understand is that this area code 416 in quotes is stored differently than this area code 416, which is an integer. Floats are decimal values. So I can say area code float equals 416. And if I put a 0.0 at the end, now that's considered a float. Again, to us, whether it's a float or an integer, we can make the distinction and change as we go. But for a programming language, the way it stores an int versus the way it stores a float is different. And so floats are anything that has a decimal. So I might have something like height equals 188.56. This we know right away is a float because it has a decimal value. Whereas if I say something like height int equals 188, this is interpreted as an integer because there's no decimal value. The last type that we want to deal with are what are called Booleans. Booleans are simply true or false. So I'm going to say flag 1 equals, and we say true, and we say then flag 2 equals false. So flags are set to true or false. And these are really useful when we want to remember something that is true or false. And these are our 4 types we want to be familiarize ourselves with and be comfortable using as beginning programmers. I hope this video helped. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.